Hey, it's Andrew here, and welcome to the E-commerce Fuel podcast, the show dedicated to helping 7- and 8-figure brands build incredible businesses and amazing lives. And today on the show, remember we're talking about something right there in the tagline, geeking out on branding hardcore. I feel like this is something that branding always has been super important, but I feel like if you look at the arc of e-commerce, especially, you were able to arbitrage cheap SEO traffic in the maybe late 2000s, cheap paid, pay-per-click traffic in that same era. There was an era of, fairly cheap Facebook traffic, and you could win on arbitrage and distribution. And I feel like we're at an era now in e-commerce and in, if not business, where that's largely gone. You can still leverage that, but you have to have a fantastic brand on top of that, which are super powerful. They're also super hard to build and maintain and grow. And that's why I'm excited to have Jessica Strelioff and Daniell LaRoy. And they are both the co-founders and creative directors rather, at Goodside, which is a branding and design agency. And I've looked at their portfolio, heard great things from them. Nick Baum from Story Brand used them for a recent design. I had nothing but glowing things to say. So I wanted to get them on and geek out about branding, the process, and just a bunch of stuff because it's such an important topic. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for coming on. Yeah. And I figured we could start. I always love this question. I have a few. What are some of both of your favorite brands? And it doesn't have to be e-commerce; it could be anything. And just the entire landscape of branding and companies. What are your favorite brands, and what do you think they do super well?
It's a great question. You named one of our favorite brands up front. It's maybe a little bit self-indulgent to answer this question with a brand that we worked on, but we loved working with Nick at Storyworth. That was one of our very favorite branding projects that we've done. I think Nick was very good at understanding the heart and soul of why stories matter and where his product kind of fit into a customer's or his customers' sort of minds and hearts. And he really tapped into that really nicely. And so we love that one.
Yeah, I think I'm such a sucker for beautifully designed consumer packaged goods. Like I have to say, like Graza olive oil, like Kin Euphorics. Anything in that sort of landscape. I will buy things just for the packaging alone as a designer. I think that is a requirement. But I think on top of that, all of those brands tell a really good story of why they exist in the world, which is a huge part of a brand and really tap into that emotional footprint. That's so important.
Lately, we've been obsessed with Flamingo Estate.
Oh.
What's
Flamingo
they do.
Estate? I haven't even heard of them. I'm pulling them up right now.
They do beautiful olive oil and candles and honey, but they're really more like small batches. They have a beautiful estate, actually, believe it or not, where it's all kind of homegrown. They're just an absolutely beautiful brand. Their copywriting is fantastic. Their packaging is fantastic. Every touch point that they have. I ordered actually a present for Danielle for Christmas, and like the email experience end to end with like from ordering to your packages on the way. It's just everything was so thoughtfully done, and it was really inspiring.
Yeah, I think the brands that we get most excited about are the ones that sort of similar to the way we try and approach brands of kind of weaving visual and verbal together. Flamingo Estate does a really great job of sort of owning a really unique voice and then also bringing it to life through really unique visual design and beautiful packaging at all of those touch points.
Well, I think one of the things too, I'm looking at this and I'm not a big candle person, so I may be missing the mark here, but there's something called the Night Blooming Jasmine and Damask Rose Ambiance set. It's a set of 6 candles. And again, really out myself as I'm not a candle with no candle guy with no kind of branding sensibility here. But like 6 candles, you could go to the dollar store and buy for probably like $1 a piece, right? And it's $150.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think and I'm not saying this because the branding is beautiful, just everything looks amazing. But I think the point I'm trying to make, not so eloquently, is that if you nail the branding really well, like the premium you can get, the premium you can charge and the margin you can charge for amazing experiences for otherwise regular products is pretty astounding.
100%. And also they really, focus on giftable items too. And so I think that branding is really key for that. Like, I'm not going to, I gave it to Danielle for Christmas, but like, I wouldn't give her 6 candles from the dollar store for Christmas. And I think the unpackaging experience, I've also received it as a gift. The unpackaging experience of receiving it is really, really special. And like that in and of itself almost feels like a gift. You don't have to wrap it. It's an unboxing sort of eye candy moment, which is nice.
Yeah. And you touched on it a little bit, but if you will indulge me, maybe this kind of a little strange, but I think it's important for understanding why branding is so important. Like, why do you give that to Danielle as a gift? Like, what is it about what they have done? Because we both just talked about how like maybe they're definitely going to be better candles than like the dollar store candle, but maybe even if they're twice or 3 times as good, that's still, $18 versus $150. So what is it about, what is it about you giving that to her, Jessica? And then Danielle, maybe you can, on the recipient side, kind of chime in and be like, what is it that you love about getting it that makes it, where does that extra $120 of like economic feel good and like feelings come from? Because I think that's so much tied into branding.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think on the purchasing side, and you maybe can speak to the receiving side, but on the purchasing side, everything was really thoughtful. They have curated packaged different gift sets essentially, which made it like easy for me to sort of find one that was appropriate for like, Danielle personally. But I think they do a really, really good job of telling the story of their products, telling the story of their company, how they are creating them. And it just makes it feel so much more than a candle. It's you're buying an experience to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the brand premium they can kind of command is due to the fact that they have really clear values. And I think where you can charge $150 instead of $7 for those 6 candles is really in identifying values that Jess sees in me, we see in the brand, and kind of connecting those dots. So that when you gift that item, it's not just here's candles because candles are nice and they make it feel nice in the house or they make the lighting nice. It's more about like, I see you, I understand you as someone who values nature, values slow grown, thoughtfully curated, beautifully designed things. And here is a reflection of you in the gift that I'm giving. And so I think, their branding in particular, but I think branding as a whole, what it can do is sort of speak to the shared values that you and a company have.
Yeah, for people watching this on the video, you can see this, but if you're listening to the podcast, we'll link up this in the show notes. But if you click on the estate page on their webpage, which is effectively their about page, it has a picture of this gorgeous, Italian, Spanish style looking villa that you might see in Italy or somewhere in the hills. It's actually outside of Los Angeles, but it says, "This is the home of radical pleasure." And it says, "High atop the hills of LA, hidden by a lush orchard and dense gardens, Flamingo Estate is a pleasure-obsessed home of some worship folk mythologies and psychedelic remedies grown only by farmers we know and trust." And then you scroll down and there's just these gorgeous pictures of planting flowers and huge just orange groves and beautiful statues and fountains. It looks like a place like Napoleon could have, just been wandering down these steps. And so, yeah, I see what you're saying now. Like it's so much of what they do is not even just the product, but like you think that you're a part of this culture, that you're getting it from this amazing place where they really obsess about quality and class and all this kind of stuff. It's really well done.
Totally.
Yeah.
And also just purely for why I gifted it to Danielle, in addition to it was aligned with her values, is Danielle and I are always researching different brands and we just wanted to see what that experience was like going through the end-to-end process.
Sure.
And just
it was research.
Yeah. It's a write-off. No, I'm kidding. But when you got the packaging, you were Danielle was sending me photos of the inside of the box where they have a sort of short narrative of why they exist in the world. And those extra details really matter when it comes to branding, especially premium brands.
Yeah, I agree. Even their opt-in for their newsletter It's not like it's so easy to be just, hey, sign up for a newsletter. But instead, their call to action is every Friday I write a letter from the garden, right? And so instantly it takes it from boring newsletter with promos to like, oh, I get transported to this like Garden of Eden like place where this person who oozes with class and sophistication is sending me a personal like handwritten note. So
100%.
which I love. What I think branding, I think one thing I thought a lot about recently is like, or just over the last 2 or 3 years, I think we all like to think we're immune from good branding, that we're just like, we're not as easily, and I don't want to say manipulated, but it kind of is a little bit, even if it's in a good way. But I've noticed the older and older I've gotten, the more and more I've tried to really analytically understand why I buy certain things over other things, the less and less convinced that I have a really good ability to filter this out. And I think branding is so much more powerful than people think. So to that end, like, what are some of the most important branding investments that you see? Like, obviously with your process that you do, there's, which we'll get into here in a minute over at Goodside, so many things that you do from copy to design. But what are the really important branding things? If someone could only do 20% of a full process that you would run them through for complete brand redesign, what would that be? The top 20%?
I think it would be the brand positioning. Do you think? I think that I knew that would be your answer too. Yeah, yeah. I think if you're going to only invest in 20% of a full brand project, I believe it's worth investing in the brand positioning development phase. I think that's really, really hard to do without an external partner to help facilitate that. It's kind of like brand being your own therapist in certain ways. And so I think that's the most important, because it's the foundation for everything else that the brand is then built on top of. But two, it's really hard to do internally alone as a founder or an internal team that's really in the weeds and living the brand day to day.
Yeah. And just for those that maybe don't know what brand positioning is, that phase is kind of the first of 3 phases of our process. And it's where we carve out sort of your unique reason for existence. It's where we define sort of who you are and why that matters to your audience, why people should choose you. For us, it's really kind of the foundation of everything that we then build: visual identity, verbal identity, website, everything kind of builds upon this core foundation of answering the questions of like, who are you? Why does that matter in the world? And why does that matter to your specific audience? How do we kind of meet people where they are?
And it should really align with your business model, but it's not the functional benefits that we're building. It's the emotional footprint that we're building and establishing in that phase.
Yeah. How often do people get it right? Because there's some people, you're gonna have a whole spectrum. Some people who just have zero idea, never even thought about this. Other people who think, oh, I know this. Here's who we are. Here's our ideal customer. Here's why we're different. And it's like, we make sure to convey that above the fold on the homepage very clearly. You get it in like 10 seconds. The elevator pitch is down. But even on that spectrum where people think that they have it, how often do you talk with them and they kind of have part of it, but they're missing like massive, huge chunks of what really appeals to their customers?
It's a good question.
Yeah. I think there's a range. We've definitely worked with founders that are really brand intelligent, if you will, and have a really good sense of the emotional footprint that their brand lives in, who they're talking to, the values that they're providing. I would say a lot of people that we talk to, they understand their product differentiators, but they don't necessarily understand their unique point of view in the world, which are distinct. They're 2 distinct things. There's like the functional benefit of why their company exists, the product that they're building, and then there's that emotional component and it's really brand positioning is merging those 2 together and making sure we're telling the customers that in a cohesive way. So I don't know. Yeah, I think I would say, to answer your question, a lot of people have a good sense of sort of the differentiators, the product space and their general audience, but that emotional component is not there completely.
Yeah.
I think one like litmus test that we use for whether you've got your brand positioning down or not is actually go around and ask your team, what is it that we're doing here? What problem are we solving? What is our brand all about? And if your salespeople and your product people and your executive team are all telling the same story, then you've got it. If they're telling different versions of a story or calling out kind of different features or different audiences, you've got a little work to do.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the emotional side? Because I think people, personally, that very resonates with me a lot because I'm very analytical, but on the emotional side, like I'm less inclined to I discount that, and I shouldn't, because it's probably way more powerful than the rational analytical side in terms of getting, why people do things. Do you have any examples you could use? Maybe Story Brand. Maybe I know there's a new winery that you guys are working with that you could, you can, or I don't know if you want to mention the name or not. You don't have to. Or any other example where you were able to take the benefits of the product and what they were doing and be able to dig a little deeper to find that emotional hook that was really important for the brand identity.
Mm-hmm. I think Puck's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can speak to Storyworth. So Storyworth, for those that maybe haven't gotten a podcast ad for it or seen it on Instagram, is a service that typically folks gift. So I might gift to my parents or my grandparents, and it connects you through story. It basically prompts you every week to write a story. And so if I gifted it to Jess, it would give her a new question each week that invites her to write down one of her stories. At the end of a year, you have a collection of 52 or so stories, depending on how quickly and how successfully you're writing your weekly stories, and binds those in a keepsake book. I think if you led with the functional benefits of Storyworth, you would focus on how beautiful this book is, what the leather feels like on the cover. You might talk about
the price.
Yeah, you might talk about the
speed of the product.
Totally. Yeah. It's a last minute giftable idea that still feels personal. And I think what we tried to do with the brand is actually elevate it to the connection that you create by writing these stories. Because a great story really is about connecting people emotionally. It is about tying you over long distances, so that when Jess writes a story, what's nice about the product and what we kind of wanted to like really celebrate was that when she writes a story, I get an email that says, Jess just finished another story. You can reply back to it. It's another sort of invitation to connect, talk about the memory that she just surfaced. And it's kind of a weekly reminder that someone's thinking about you.
Yeah. Where would you put, like, when you think about all the different things you have, brand identity or positioning, which you said was probably the most important. You've got copy, you've got design, logo, kind of the aesthetics. Where would you put the aesthetics and the design facet or aspect of it? Because I feel like multiple times in my career, I've probably been a part of 6 to 8 major website redesigns across different companies. Mm-hmm. And so often I'm very focused on the aesthetic version, how it looks. And I feel like at the end, I'm always wish I would spend a little more time on the copy side of things. For example, or even like I'll be looking at a website and it's really speaking to you, resonating with me. And I realize after kind of stepping back a little bit, I'm like, the copy is really good, but the graphics, like the design is not that impressive. And I think it's very easy, at least for me, to want to focus on the graphical side and the aesthetic side. But as a consumer, I forget how important the copy is. So anyway, shooting that back to you, would you agree, like brand positioning, number one, the copy and the copy, and then the very bottom is probably the aesthetics?
I think as a designer, I'm like, I don't know. No, all jokes aside, though. I mean, I think we started Goodside. I know we started Goodside to really weave those two worlds together. So a really big gap that we saw, Danielle is a copywriter strategist. I'm a art director, designer. So we're really merging the visual and the verbal worlds
Thank you
together.
For not just standing up and walking out of the room. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Danielle had to hold me back. No, but we saw a big gap there. I mean, honestly, a lot of times we've seen a lot of rebrands happen where obviously the copywriting is an afterthought, or the positioning is an afterthought. And we wanted to create Goodside because we wanted to weave those two worlds together and be really thoughtful about how that works, and how they play off of each other. We really do it in parallel. So we're developing the visual and verbal identity in parallel. In those early presentations, we're thinking about copy, we're showing copy with the design, and we're showing a spectrum of how that can actually come to life. So we'll maybe show 2 or 3 directions. The first direction, is maybe one tone, one personality, both a visual, verbal personality, and then we show a range there. So we can explore that up front. Sometimes there's a Frankenstein of different concepts that come out of that process, which is okay. We like a Frankenstein, but we're thinking about that really early from the very beginning when we're building the identity out.
Yeah. I think
this is your chance to just totally dunk Danielle. Okay. Just be like, absolutely, coffee. It's by far
coffee is king.
No, never. Not even to me. No, I think viewing them stack ranked is always a little bit of a trap in terms of saying like, okay, we're going to do, I think brand positioning is definitely the foundation. That is what comes first. And then I think leading with either design or copy sort of leaves things lacking. And so what we found is that like, I'll truly like write a list of headlines that will prompt creative ideas for Jess on the design side. Likewise, she will create designs that will then sort of inspire new copy headlines and things like that.
Yeah.
And the best things for us, the best projects for us are the ones that sort of come together collaboratively.
I will say copy tends to be the first thing that when we're having new business conversations or scoping out a project, like copy often is the thing that clients feel inclined to nix first. And that gets us really sad because we see them, that's not really an option for us. Like it really is part of the brand. If you're thinking of a brand as a human being, maybe the logo is the face, your heart is the brand position, or your brain is the brand position, your clothes are the visual identity, but how you speak is the verbal identity. And it's all important when you're creating this cohesive human full of life brand.
If somebody's thinking about going through just a complete brand overhaul, or maybe, and I'm guessing a lot of times it's not, it is overhaul, but really you're probably just really clarifying what makes their brand important and amplifying that. You're not redesigning it from scratch, of course. You're just showing the great parts of it. So they're thinking of going through that whole process. What is a rough, and let's say, I know the scopes probably vary dramatically, but let's say you're doing a brand kind of building that foundation, that positioning element, logo, website, and design, and kind of elements, creative elements they can use for newsletters and things like that. What is a rough timeline for something like that? And what is a rough budget? And I'm put budget very much with an asterisk of a range, because again, I know there's a lot of different moving parts there. But for people who are thinking like, is this something that I could swing, or is this out, do I need to wait a couple of years? What's that look like?
Totally. And that's where it really varies on the partner sort of options too. So like freelancers are going to be very different than us, and large agencies are going to be very different for us. So I'll speak to us and how we sort of structure things. And I can talk about the others too, if interested as well. But typically projects for that phase 1, the brand positioning, and then phase 2, that brand building phase, that's about 12 weeks. And then the brand launch is that third phase. So that's where we get into like website building, packaging design, marketing collateral. Sometimes that's like designing social media templates or pitch decks or whatever it may be. That phase is really where it varies the most. So sometimes that's 1 week, it's a 1 week sprint. Sometimes that's, another 5 to 7 weeks. So that is really where we can flex a lot. Oftentimes in that phase, we're also doing art directing photo shoots, or art directing illustrators, working with developers to QA the site. So there's a lot of moving pieces and flexibility in that third phase. I would say most of our projects are about 3 to 4 months on average. But of course, we can get scrappier when we need to. And then we can also have a much longer engagement. I think Storyworth brand engagement was closer to 6 to 8 months, to give you a general sense of timeline, because that had a lot of moving parts. It had packaging, it had a photo shoot, it had an illustrator, custom illustrations, it had a website build, book redesign. And then budget-wise, again, there's a lot of flexibility there. I think it depends on the size of the company that we're working with, and obviously the touch points. Our starting projects are about $40,000. I would say our bigger projects are in the $150,000 range all in. Larger agencies will charge 200, 300,000, or then some if you go with the pentagrams and Collins and Red Antlers of the world. Freelancers you can get obviously much cheaper. There's going to just be a little bit more hands-on management needed on the client side.
Yeah. Super helpful. Thank you. What are your thoughts on it's been an exciting year to say the least on the AI front, right? Like from so many different tools, and a lot of them have huge implications for branding and design, especially, right? I'd love to hear your thought. Like, I'm sure there's a level of, and I'm not saying this towards you specifically, but towards the agency, or if I was in there, a level of animosity. If I'm a designer or a photographer, and you have something like Midjourney that's just sucking up all of the creative inspiration and then spitting stuff out. There's a tension there for sure, and I think that's very merited. But it's also this amazing time to be able to iterate, and for people to be able to, whether it's ChatGPT, to be able to bounce branding ideas off, or be able to get through 40 different logo iterations in an afternoon, just a chance to iterate a lot faster. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how do you think about that? Like, what parts of that frustrate you? What parts of that are exciting? And just your thoughts on AI in general as it relates to branding and being able to create cool things.
Yeah.
In general, I feel like we're a little bit more optimistic about it than maybe the average creative team. I definitely have, some sad feelings, especially about illustrators and photographers. I do think they're probably going to be the first ones that are really feeling AI and feeling some scary feels there. But for us, I think we look at it as a tool. It's basically like having a really awesome intern, and we can do a lot quicker, iteration.
I love that. I'm probably gonna steal that with you with credit, but IA is like an amazing intern because some people are afraid of it. It's not phenomenal, but it sure is helpful in getting a lot done. So
and you still need to just like an intern, you still need to guide it and know where you want to take it ultimately. But it's a huge, asset to have. We use it a ton for early concepting when we're doing brand identity building. So we just did a round one presentation where we use Midjourney to generate illustration styles that we were really excited about. And it was just a proof of concept MVP. We didn't end up using it in the final brand, but it was just showing what could be possible in the brand world. And maybe we would have used AI as the final output, but oftentimes I think we'll go and recommend an illustrator that has a similar style to do the final production.
I think for us, the beauty and the curse of AI is the volume that you can produce with it. It's amazing that you can tell a tool create 50 iterations of this logo, and it can do it in 30 seconds. Like, that would take days and days of Jess's time, and it wouldn't be a good use of time. I think the downside of that, obviously, is that great branding requires curation. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in AI right now is people kind of skipping that curation step and sort of shipping what the AI says as it says it. And I think that's where things can kind of turn a little bit icky, is when you're producing for production's sake. Things like SEO come to mind, where the volume is the thing. And I think that's where AI gets a little tricky, is when you're producing and not curating, you sort of lose people.
I read the term AI beige the other day, and I love that term. AI beige is just going to become so prominent. I'm like, that's so true. It's already here. But I think there's some things that we do to sort of feel better ethically about it. I will never use an artist's name when I'm generating Midjourney images, for example. Adobe Firefly already doesn't allow you to input an artist's name. So if you're I want a photo in the style of Wes Anderson, it will just delete Wes Anderson and not even understand that at all. That's how Adobe's sort of getting around that. So I think those are things that we're thinking about. How can we start to develop guidelines around using AI in a really thoughtful way, and also understanding when it's appropriate to use AI and when it's not. Maybe there's some like, if you're just doing a bunch of like social ads that need to get put out, like maybe AI imagery creation is perfect for that, but something that's going to live longer, like a custom illustration on a packaging, design, that's something that you would work with an artist to build and to create.
Yeah. Any tools that come to mind that you have yet loved? A couple that I came across my radar. Have you heard of Reloom by chance?
I love Reloom. Yep. We've been using that lately. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like as someone who I have zero artistic or wireframing ability at all. And I've been someone who's like gone into like, Photoshop and tried to make like a wireframe with like the line tool, and just horrible. I mean, it's been a while, but I did do this. Anyway, for people that spot check me here on how I'm describing this, but it's an AI powered sitemap and wireframe tool. So you can go and be like, hey, here's my homepage. I need these other pages. And it will automatically drop in a lot of the wireframe templates from anything from like, hey, these are our primary features to testimonials to signups. And anyway, I watched this tutorial of someone build out a wireframe, the sitemap, and then a wireframe. And it was really good in like 15 minutes. And granted, they knew how to use it well, but I was blown away.
Yeah, we actually just used it on a project recently to start with the wire. Like, we used it as a starting point, and then we had to jump in and customize it. But we built wireframes for an 8-page site in like 20 minutes. And what I really like about it is it'll sort of develop the wireframe page, and then you'll select a section of the page, and then you can have a lot of different options. So you can cycle through, like if it's like a blog sort of section where it's teasing to like 3-up card blog post section or whatever, you can choose different layout styles or different sort of content styles for each of those sections, which is really handy. It's awesome. Visual Electric is a new one that I've been playing around with a little bit. It is another image generation tool. What I really like about it is it almost has these preset filters where you can basically like select a style that you want to generate an image in. So it has a really, really nice artistic quality to it, where Midjourney, it takes a lot. You need to know a lot more like art direction terms to get a style that you actually want. Visual Electric allows you to like sort of apply these preset filters. So it has everything from like an embroidery filter to like a risograph letterpress print or whatever it may be. And the output of those qualities, artistic qualities, is impeccable. The downside of it is the sort of customization or the curation of it after that. Like, you can't quite tweak it once you apply that filter. It's a little harder.
Yeah. Danielle, did you have any other tools that have super, really impressed you on the AI or otherwise front?
I've had a harder time on the verbal front than I think Jess has on the visual front, in terms of like finding AI tools that stand up. I don't have a good reason why that is exactly, except maybe that I think copywriting is a little bit less like iterative is maybe the wrong word, but like I don't know. I think sitting down and like thinking through things, as opposed to like playing around with the different components that you have.
It's harder to art direct copywriting.
Yeah.
Maybe is like a good way of saying it.
I found the same thing too with, because recently I've been trying to, for some of the social stuff we'll put out, trying to be able to like have ChatGPT write a first draft of intros, like on Twitter, for example, that I can use and go through and edit. And man, I've spent probably 4 or 5 hours being very specific. Like, okay, here's like 4 examples of ones I've written. Here's why this hook is good. Here's why like introduce something interesting about the person. Like, come up with 3 good takeaways for this. Like, try to end it well. And I spent an insane amount of time trying to create a formula that I can plug stuff into. And one I just found, I mean, you Jess, I think you mentioned the term AI beige. Like, almost all of it would come out AI beige, right? Like, terrible hooks, like really cheesy. And then I'd even try to tell it like, no, this is cheesy. Spend more time on my examples and my tone. And just, 5 hours isn't that much time, but I was disappointed with the lack of progress that I made, to the point where I just got to the point where now, like after an episode, I'll hop on and do like a 3 or 4 minute debrief, being like, hey, here's the most interesting things, like the big takeaways, like stuff to focus on, what I found compelling about the guests. And we use that to try to write an intro versus trying to farm it out from a transcript, or just write it yourself. It takes less time sometimes, it seems. So.
Yeah. Your intern's struggling.
Yes, exactly. It could just be It could just be that I haven't found the right intern yet.
Oh man!
But I agree with you.
Yeah. We did an experiment maybe about 6 months ago where we tried to build a brand using only AI from end to end. I gave up at the logo part.
It's tough.
But we tried to do like the naming and the positioning using ChatGPT.
I will say the naming was by far the weakest piece of the process from like an AI ability to help perspective. And I think that probably stems from the fact that good names aren't formulaic. They're not like so directly tied. They sort of need like a creative jump from the idea to the name that reflects that core idea. And so we had a really hard time getting AI to think of a good name. Eventually it was like, we came up with a name ourselves, and then we were like, let's coach the AI to get us to this name so that we can get there, which is a bit of cheating.
Yeah.
AI isn't going to come up with a name like Flamingo Estate. Not going to happen. So
right. Exactly.
Yeah. I'd love to cap off the discussion with a quick lightning round if you're open to it. So we'll alternate. Danielle, maybe we can start with you, and then we'll just go back and forth. So you haven't heard these, but feel free to just, anywhere from one word to 1 or 2 sentence answers, and we'll work through them if you're game for putting a bow on it this way.
Love it.
Great. First question: what's your favorite logo or tagline from a brand that you've either worked with or one that's just out in the world?
Favorite that we've worked with, I know my answer, is a company called Puck, and they're a recruiting platform, and their tagline that we came up with was "Find Your People." It is both speaking to recruiters and also to candidates, helping everyone find their people at work.
I like it. That's great. Jess, what's one of the fondest memories you have from your childhood?
Oh, I went most years to Yosemite with my mom and her best friend and her daughter, and we would hike and camp there, and it was awesome. Yosemite is my favorite place in the world.
That was a good, quick answer.
Yeah, I didn't have to think about that one. That's awesome. Danielle, if you weren't living where you do now, where would you live and why?
Oh, this is a good, timely question. Don't ask me this.
We considering a move here? Is that why?
I am.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yes. I would move back to London. I lived in London for the last 3 years, and I just think it's like the most exciting, creative, amazing city in the world. But I love San Francisco. I just bought a house here, so I'm here for the long term.
Jess, what's a brand you'd love to redesign because you think they have a lot of potential, but their branding chops are like 2 out of 10?
Well, the first one that came to mind was Chewy. Chewy's brand is actually amazing in a lot of ways. I guess I'm purely thinking about visual identity when I say that, but from like a customer experience perspective, Chewy's awesome. But their visual identity could use a little bit of love, I think. Yeah, and it's a pet company. Chewy, call me.
Chewy, if you're listening, get in touch. Danielle, what's the hardest part of your business?
Ooh, good question.
You're getting the hard questions. I get the easy softballs.
Oh, Jess, you get the hardest one on the whole round next, so it'll even out. Yeah.
Good.
Oh, good. Weird. We lost connection.
I think the hardest part is when a great company comes around and we don't have bandwidth to take it on. We book out a few months in advance. And I think that's always the hardest part is seeing the potential there and just not being able to logistically make it work.
Yeah. And we both hate disappointing people too.
Yes, that's true.
You're both people pleasers.
Jess, so the one I was alluding to, your next question, how much money is enough? And this is a perennial question I always ask every podcast guest. You can answer one of two ways. You can answer either a lump sum in the bank, or an annual amount you would get for life, like an annuity, like, X dollars every year for life. But the idea being, how much have you had that? I mean, you'd always take more, it'd be nice, but you'd be able to live a completely happy, comfortable life with that amount. So how much would that be? However you want to answer it.
Like you're actually looking for a financial number?
100%. Yes.
Oh man.
Told you. You thought you squeaked away.
I mean, well, this depends where I live, which is a whole other identity crisis question. I mean, my answer without getting into financial like number, maybe I'll cop out here a little bit, was going to be enough where I'm not looking at my bank account, which I feel like I've already reached, where I'm not worrying about, okay, we want to take a vacation for 2 weeks. Like, are we going to be able to do that? Are we, we want to go out to a fancy dinner. Can we do that? We want to help a family member. Can we do that? And it's not. So that feeling, I think I've already reached. Anything on top of that is icing on the cake. I will say I do want to buy a house in San Francisco or the Bay Area at some point. So, and you need a few $1 million for that. So yeah, I mean, if I wanted to get like really specific with financial numbers, if I had 10 million in the bank between me and my husband, I'd be very happy.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah.
I think
I'd be comfortable for life.
Yeah. Well, I think the hanging part of that question is like enough to do what, right? Like, is it enough to quit our jobs? Because I think actually what's nice about working on Goodside is that Jess and I probably would do that for a lot less money than we do. But if it's like enough to have every hope and dream that you ever had come true, now you're talking private jet money.
I think it's such an interesting question, and thank you for answering, Jess, in a specific number. One thing I also do too is a lot of people will kind of punt on that, and I always, even though it's square worthy, I always like ask at least one more time, because you get numbers from like $150,000 in the bank to, we've had someone say 100 million to $1 billion. Like you get the whole gamut, and I think it's just very interesting because the idea of enough is something that I think is a very fascinating concept. Like there's a great book I talk about all the time on the podcast about the psychology of money. And he says, the author says, like the hardest part in personal finance is getting to the point where you say, I have enough, like stop moving your goalposts. And he's like, most billionaires don't have that. Right. So like, if you can do that, in some ways you're wealthier than a billionaire is. Anyway, I just think it's a really interesting kind of question to noodle on. So
totally. And I paused on it because I'm like, I do have enough now. And I do not have $10 million in the bank. I should clarify that. I have far less. And which I think it's a good question to think on and reflect and actually be grateful for what you have now. So thanks for asking.
Yeah. I think it's all about like not moving the goalposts on yourself, which I think is why like you have so many billionaires that are not satisfied with their wealth, is because you just keep raising your floor of expectations, and then the ceiling can never keep up.
It's so hard though too. It's like branding. It's like I'm immune from this branding stuff. Branding doesn't work on me, and like I'm slowly realizing, oh, that's just totally a lie. It totally works on me. And then
what shoes are you wearing?
Which shoes am I wearing?
Yeah. Are you wearing Nikes by chance?
I am wearing Under Armour shoes right now. Why do you ask?
Okay. Well, I was just saying, like Nike is Under Armour is a huge brand too, and there's a reason you purchased them. I was just gonna make fun if it was a Nike sneaker.
Well, no. Have you seen the? I don't think it's out yet, but have you seen the trailer for the movie Air that's coming out?
I saw Air. I think it is out already.
Is it out?
Or like an Amazon? Yeah. I watched it. It was great. It was awesome.
Okay, well, I'm way behind the times here. I thought this movie was coming out in like 2 months, and it's been out for probably 9 months at this point.
I think
okay,
so,
so Worth, because I saw the trailer and that looked like just a classic. The story of like how Nike landed
About
Michael Jordan and kind of
Yeah.
recrafted their brand identity. So Worth, like, thumbs up for people listening to check it out.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. Yeah. And that was like when Nike was kind of the underdog too.
Mhm.
And it's a great story if you're not familiar with it, or even if you are familiar with it.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. It's going to watch this next week. Danielle, back to you. This one is way less squirm worthy. Who's another designer branding studio you really admire, and why?
Ooh, good question. I recently listened to an interview with Michelle Matter, who runs Practice. And I think she's just doing something really special with her brands. She approaches things in like a really long-term engagements, starting kind of at zero at idea foundation. And I always think her work is really excellent.
Nice.
Yeah, her model is interesting. She has like 2-year project engagements there, and she almost acts as sort of an in-house creative team with the clients that she engages with for 2 years, and helps, everything from, packaging design, or if, I think she worked on a medical or a vitamin company. She helped source doctors to make sure that they were creating the right formula. And like, she gets really, It's a very different approach than what we've seen out
What's
there.
her name, or her company's name?
Her company's name's Practice. I think it's like Practice,
I think
.nyc or Inc. Yeah, Practice.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. Thanks. I'll have to check her out. Jessica, how many hours a week do you work on average?
Probably 30.
30.
Yeah.
And Danielle, do you have a favorite charity or cause?
Ooh, yes. Here in San Francisco, I am involved with Larkin Street Youth Services, which is they're trying to help homeless youth get off the streets for good. And I think they're doing fantastic work. If you're in the Bay Area, highly recommend you check them out and support.
Nice. And then finally, Jess, we'll end with you. Your number one hobby, and you can't say work or design or graphic design.
Two came to mind, and it's going to just make me sound like such a homebody. I love reading in a bath. I read every day in the bath at night. That is my favorite hobby. My other one is I love walking my dog every day, walking and hiking my dog. So
nice. Yeah. Fantastic.
Those are tied.
Well, appreciate both of you coming on. Thank you so much. And again, if you're listening and this struck a chord with you, if you're looking for some fantastic brand positioning work, design work, or the whole package, Goodside is the name of the studio. You can find them at goodside.studio. So Jess, Danielle, this has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate it. And thanks for making the time.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you for having us.